full name is Alma Reid Goldsberry. I'm named after my grandfather on my mother's side. His name was Alma Olson. So I was named after him, and it's caused me a lot of problems because my everything you fill out, as you know, it says first name, middle initial, and everything I've got civilly is Reid, and that's it. Until the government, Medicare, and that comes along, first name, middle initial. And so I ended up going to the doctor for an appointment or something, and it'd be Alma R, and they said, who's that? I said, that's me. So it's caused a lot of concern, and now since I've had this past year, it's been horrible. Because I was in 4 hospitals, and everybody start over with Alma. And finally I had one of them made me prove that was my name. Huh. I had to have a birth certificate and passport or whatever you've got. Had to have 3 different kinds. So I told my mother I'm going to get after her when I see her. Read in everything I filled out.
Okay.
So that's been a little bit of a problem, but I'm proud to be named after my grandfather. He was a good, tough farmer. My mother came from 13 children. Wow. And they grew up in Cache Valley. And so we had a lot to do with them. We'd go over and visit, have a lot of reunions together because 13 people, that was, plus their spouse. You got 26 people. Got a party right there. So I'd have that, and I was born in Tremont. My dad was he just did odd jobs. He was born in Paradise, Utah. And his dad was just a little bit of a dirt farmer. So my dad went out, he worked in the mines, he worked whatever he could. And so he was a foreman for Dave Holmgreen in Tremont. He had a big farm. So my dad just kind of managed it for him. We were there for 13, 14 years in Bear River City, out here. And then my dad decided he wasn't getting anywhere. He didn't have any insurance, didn't have anything. So he said, I better do something. So he came into Brigham and worked at a Fram, just cars, trucks, all types of oil filters and that. But he was working on the cement floor and he'd never done that. It really hurt his legs. So that's when Intermountain Indian School came here. And so they moved from Bear River City into Brigham here. I told him I didn't want to move. I really loved it out there. He had horses and cattle and dogs and cats and everything. But he ran about 350 acres there. We always had to help. I've thinned more beets than you can look at. Tough work. Haul hay and do all sorts of things. We moved in here. And that was kind of a blessing in disguise because I think when I was 8, we were listening. The only thing we had was radio. Television was around. And so they gave us when we moved in here, they asked me something about, what do you want to be? And I says, well, I've been listening to Dean Bennett broadcast BYU games. I'd keep score. I thought I'd love to be a college basketball player. And so I started about 8 years of age and started to practice. And we had a hay loft that they used to put the hay in. And then they came with a new machine and baled it. So they put the bales right by the feed lot and didn't use the barn up there. And so my brother made a basketball rim and put it up in there. And we used a gunny sack for a net. I could play all day and kids would come down on weekends from town. But by moving into Brigham, the competition was a lot better. So that obviously helped me. So that was my dream, to be a college basketball player. I thought I'd make it. So that's all I did. I just played ball all the time. And if we stayed in Bear City, they had the grade schools played in the league. Tremont and Garland, Elwood, Bear City, Korean. They'd all have teams, and every Friday in the afternoon they'd play basketball. Let their grade school kids out for an hour to watch it. It was pretty competitive. And I was hoping that if you're good enough, you could play in the 6th grade, but if not, it was really 7th and 8th graders league. Most of those guys went to Bear River High School. A few of us came into Box Elder, but I moved, so I didn't have a choice. But so that's all that I did. That's all I did, other than farm, whatever my dad made me do.
Basketball and farm.
Yep, we'd have probably 10 acres of beets. My brother and I thinned most of them. That was hard work. Boy, that was tough. And then we'd harvest the beets, and I remember when we'd load them by hand in a truck. And most of them I couldn't lift. I mean, they were huge. They really good ground, I guess. So we did that, and then I just started in at Box Elder Junior High and Box Elder High School, and made the teams there to play, and then I played for Box Elder High School, and then I got a partial scholarship to Utah State to play basketball. They would give me books, tuition, and fees. Then I could work for $30, full towels or pack bags, whatever they wanted. And so that really helped as far as my folks were poor dirt farmers. That's all they did. I think he got paid $125 a month.
Wow.
But he had a garden spot. He raised the beef, lambs, sheep, whatever. And so he grew up most of the stuff we ate. So I didn't know that we were poor. I thought everybody's like that.
That was the norm, huh?
Yep, that's the way it was. And so I went over to Utah State and played. You had to play freshman ball. And if you played freshman ball, then you only had 3 other years. They forced you to play freshman ball, which I think was good, because that's a big adjustment from high school to college. And
a lot faster, a lot stronger.
Yeah, I had a coach that coached me in high school at Box Elder here for 1 year. He coached me my sophomore year here, and he was over there as an assistant coach. And so he came up to me and said, "Reid, you got to learn to shoot that ball faster." He said, "What you got by with in high school, they'll block them all over here. But," he says, "you got to learn to shoot it faster. Now don't throw it, shoot it." And he spent quite a bit of extra time with me. And I guess I got doing it because I got to play. We played 14 or 15 games. We won 11 of them. We were 11-4, so we played pretty good competition. And so I got to play then, and then the next year I moved up to the varsity, which was sophomore. You have sophomore, juniors, and seniors that you could play. And he told me, "Now you have to learn to shoot the ball quicker." He says, "What you got by with as a freshman, they'll block up here." It was just like coming out of high school. I thought, "Oh my gosh." So he helped me, and I worked on it. And but unfortunately, I guess at that time, C. Spaker was the coach. Just a heck of a nice guy. But he was older coach, and we had guys from Indiana and all over, and they just abused him, basically. They did what they wanted to do.
It was a little too nice, huh?
Yeah, and he had some good ball players. We got him out of California, colored guys, but his philosophy was he coached at Granite High School in Salt Lake City for 10, 15 years, and he won 3 or 4 state championships. So they brought him up there and think maybe he could do it at college, and he was pretty successful. But he had a philosophy: you put 5 guys together, let them play together, and that's better than playing everybody. So they had what they called the 5 Iron Men and 1. That was a substitute in case anybody got in foul trouble. So if you weren't in the top 6,
You didn't play.
the only time you played is when we were blowing them out or getting blown out. So I probably played the equivalent of 1 game, just in pieces. And so I was a little discouraged that way, but I came home, and that's when my bishop asked me about going on a mission. And I hadn't even thought about it, because I started when I was 8, and that's all I wanted to do. Anyway, he cornered me at Christmas. Says, "What did you decide?" And I said, "I guess I'll go." And I don't know why I did. Honestly, at that time, I do now. But I had 3 other friends that said they were going. I was the only one that went on a mission. The other 3 got married at that time, so I just quit and went on a mission. And as would happen, I went to Australia and played in the Mormon Yankee teams. I probably played, they said, "How many games did you play in Australia?" And I said, "Probably 100. Play 1 a week, pretty much." We played in a league down there. The Mormon Yankees could beat almost anybody they came up with. They had 2 Olympians that went to Australia, but Australia had to play in to get in the 1960 Olympics, and they didn't get in because they weren't that good. So I just played there for that time, and let me back up then. When I said I'd go on a mission, I didn't know anything. The only thing I knew about the church was what I learned in seminary, and as you know, if you don't pay attention, you don't learn a lot. I enjoyed it, but I didn't know anything about it. I don't ever remember having a Bible in our home. Never had family home evening or prayers or anything like that. My parents were good to me, but they just weren't. Religion wasn't a top priority.
Did you guys go to church on Sunday?
No. I just was ordained a deacon when we left River City to come to Brigham. Hadn't passed the sacrament once. Came to Brigham, and a neighbor to our house came over. He was president of the Deacon's Corps. He came over and introduced himself, said, "I'll come and get you to go to church." I said, "All right." So he came every Sunday, got me. Finally, I said, "I think I know how to get there." So he said, "Okay, I'll meet you there then." And so he really helped me to get acquainted and go to church. That's where I started to pass the sacrament. And then that's when I started to learn a little bit about the word of wisdom and some of that stuff. We used to have iced tea every Sunday, and I really liked it. I thought, man, this is good, but they taught me in the Deacon's Corps, you don't, on the word of wisdom, these are the things you don't drink or eat. And so I came home and asked my mother, I said, "Why do we drink that tea?" She said, "I don't know, just got doing it." I said, "We're not supposed to do that." So I didn't drink it. They quit the tea, and they had coffee, they quit the coffee.
Your parents did?
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome.
And my mother had jobs like taking the baptistry clothes, or being there to hand them out, things like that. She had jobs like that. She worked in the relief society. And that's about all we did. We didn't have any religious, spiritual instruction except what I got at church, or the home teachers were good. And so when he asked me, I said, "Yeah, I'll go." And I thought, "What are you doing?" and my friends got after me. Said, "You got a scholarship. You're going to give that up to go on a mission?" I said, "Yeah, I guess I am." But I was frightened to death because I had no clue what would happen. I was thrilled to go to Australia. I had no place in mind. Well, they asked me, they said, "Is there a place you want to go?" And I said, "Yeah, anywhere foreign." And he said, "Well, will you go wherever they call you?" I said, "Yeah, I'll go there." And I went to Australia, and I was thrilled to death, really, I guess, to be there. I know when I found out the Mormon Yankees were over there and got to play on those, that was even better.
Yeah.
And but I thought, well, if I'm going to go on a mission, I'm going to learn about the gospel. I'm going to have 2 years to study it. And I read the Standard Works through in my first mission, or my first part of the mission. I was there about 3 months, and they said I don't remember all the things I said about the Book of Mormon. And so when I finished it, I started to pray, and I think it was 2 weeks. We were walking home, my companion and I can tell you the street, the feeling gave me. I knew it was true. And so that was my first testimony, I guess, of the church, was the Book of Mormon. And then I read the New Testament, the Old Testament, Pearl of Great Price, and all of those. And a lot of it I didn't understand, but at least I read it through. And they asked us to do one scripture every day when we're in the NTC. I thought I could do that. So I'd memorize those scriptures. We had the, systematic plan. That was really good. I really loved that. Easy to teach, simplified it, and wasn't really controversial. But we got by with that, and I thoroughly enjoyed that. After I got to understand, we'd have Bible bashes occasionally with ministers. It scared me to death. My companion says, "Oh, you know more than ministers." And I said, "Yeah." But we would have good old scripture bashes, and they told us not to do it, but we'd get bored sometimes. I had a companion that said, "Let's go see," his name was Elder Roundy. He says, "Let's go see Sister Jones over here. She's a Baptist. We can tie her up in knots, have something to finish with." So we'd go over and have a Bible bash with her. She said, "I'll have to ask my minister. You come back next week." And we thought maybe we'd be able to convert her, but it doesn't work that way. But we'd do that occasionally, and so I learned it. Then I worked with elders who were traveling elders, and they would go to different cities where the elders were. We'd work with them all day. I thoroughly enjoyed that. And so I began to use all those scriptures. I just kept memorizing. I thought, when I go home, I'm at least going to know what the church teaches. So I just used those scriptures and followed what they said to do, and I really was blessed. I had good companions. They weren't some that would cause you trouble. They'd just, once in a while, they'd sleep in a little longer, but they were good companions. So I really owe a lot to those. And then I guess after that, I gained a testimony of the prophet Joseph Smith. And I think I've got almost every book of Susan Easton Black about prophet. And I really learned to appreciate Joseph Smith and what he went through. And I thought, man, he's a lot like me. He knew about as much as I did. And so I've read everything that I read from him and what he went through and how he felt. And I really gained a great respect for the prophet. And then after 2 years, I got a chance to come home. And I thought it was interesting. I didn't know how things happened in the mission field, and that I thought if you're a good elder, you'll get to be assistant to the president. You'll be his own leaders. You'll be all this and all that. And I found out in a hurry. It's when you come on the mission, meaning they space the assistant to the president 6 months apart. Well, these people who are in between that, they don't even get considered. And I thought, boy, was I fooled. And so I thought it makes sense to me now, because they've got to run the mission and they have to do it. So, but if you weren't scattered in that 6 months, you didn't even get considered. And I became assistant to the president, but I knew then why I did. I just happened to be at the right month. And I enjoyed that. You go, I was a traveling elder. You go from the most popular elder in the mission to the least when you become an assistant to the president. Everybody wants you to send them where they want to go. And we opened new areas up in Port Moresby and Gay, and Ley, New Guinea. And everybody wanted to go up there. Of course, you only send 2. So that was quite an eye-opener. And then I came back after 2 years, and 6 of us, 5 of us went out together. And one other elder came alone about a month later. And so they didn't want him to go home alone. So he says, would you 5 mind staying an extra 2 or 3 weeks? And then he can go with you. All of them wanted to stay, obviously. We did. And then we came home together, went to New Zealand. We flew into Christchurch, and we went all the way up through, and we'd rent a car and just travel and see what we could see. And we would do one thing. We had some big football players, 6'2", 240 pounds. And we got in these cars and we'd sit up like this and look out the side as we'd go by, and everybody go, look at those. They thought we're giants, I guess. That's what we're trying to do. But we were there a week in Auckland. Then we took the Mariposa, the Master Line ship from Auckland, New Zealand to Hawaii. And we stopped at Fiji and Samoa on the way home, because going out you just flew straight. It took us 42 hours. The sun never set. You kept thinking, "God, what's going on here?" But it was interesting that way. And then we spent a week in Hawaii all together. Then we departed our separate ways and came home. My mother and sister met me in Los Angeles, and we went to the Brooklyn Dodger game, my favorite team, baseball. And that was really an experience to see that. Willie Mays played for the Giants. Don Drysdale was pitching. Johnny Goldsberry was the catcher in that. And I remember it was Johnny Goldsberry that hit it. He was left-handed batter. And Willie Mays at the crack of the bat took off and went to center field fence. Reached up and caught it. Ooh, call. I mean, he was on the move as soon as that ball was hit. And he timed it perfectly to get there. And later in the game, there was another one, I think it might have been Duke Snyder. Hit one out there. Same place Johnny Roseboro did. Willie Mays never moved anything. He just stood right there and waited, watched the ball landed 5 rows up. Homer. Now how he could tell that was amazing. Never moved, never wasted any energy.
That's a homer right there.
Yeah. And I thought, holy cats. But it was just fun just to see all those guys. Then I came back and went over to Utah State and talked to him, and this was another blessing. Liddell Anderson was hired to take C. Speaker's place. And so this year was his first year. So I thought, I got a chance. Everybody's even. So I went out and played. He said, I'll give you the same thing that you had before, a partial. But if you do what we want you to do, he said, I can up that anytime to full. I said, that's fine. That's fine. I'm glad just to be able to do it. And so we started practicing. And we had guys from California and colored guys from all city, all state. We had 5 all-staters from Utah on that team. And I thought, what am I doing here? I was recruited by Bruce Larson at Weaver State. I said, I couldn't make your team. That's when he had Lionel Holmes. Oh, God, was he good? I said, I can't. You got some good players. He said, no. But anyway, I didn't go there. I went over to Utah State because that's where I was. And they knew me and knew what I did and what I didn't do. And so they gave me that partial scholarship, and we just practiced. And I couldn't see that there was much difference in most of us, those all city leaguers. Anyway, practice was over. We began the season. And we played Idaho State, and I was the first substitute off the bench. And I thought, oh, I'm the 6th man, like they used to do it. But Liddell was different than that. He was really good. I loved him. And so I had a good game. I had 5 interceptions in that. I had to play guard was my position, but some of these guys didn't know what they were doing. And so he says, Reid, you know all these positions, don't you? Yeah, I think. He says, you play forward here. And he says, Darnell Haney, our center, got in foul trouble. He says, you know the place. You play center. And I looked at him, and our center was 6'10". Here I am, 6'2". But I had some interceptions, had a good game. So the next game, he started me, and then I stayed in and played the rest of that season. At Christmas time, when we were going home, Liddell called me and said, you're on full ride. I thought, man,
That's awesome.
I'm a lucky man. And I think it happened because I went on a mission. Lord blessed me for going. Because I wasn't anything compared to some of those guys, but they just didn't put forth the effort. And so I played in, and I played my senior year there, and we had a good team. We went 22-7, and we went 20-7. And we were the second team in Utah State history to go to the NCAA tournament.
That's awesome.
They put the year. And it was great. I got to do what I wanted to do. And then I talked to my old principal. He was still the boss at Boxelder here. I majored in English. He said, I've got some openings if you want to go. They stereotyped me, made fun of you. That it was terrible.
For being an athlete?
Yeah. I took English classes, and we had a Roman literature class from Reid, and he was a good one. I liked him. He'd come in with his notebook, he'd open, he'd talk for 50 minutes, close it, see you tomorrow. Just well organized. I've been going there about 2 weeks in the fall of the year. He said, Reid, he said, Mr. Goldsberry, may I see you after class? I thought, oh no, what have I done? So I went up there and he says, aren't you the Reid Goldsberry that plays basketball? I says, yes. Is anything wrong with that? And he says, no. He says, all of my cohorts in our departmental meeting today talked about you. I said, you did? He says, I wanted to know why you're taking all these English classes. I said, I'm majoring in it. Oh, well, I'll tell my colleagues so they know why you're in there. And I thought, what difference does it make? But see, they just stereotype me as if I'm a jock. You shouldn't be in English. I said, well, I'm majoring in it. And that was the best thing that Mr. Payne, my principal, told me. He says, get a decent academic major. He says, you may not want to coach all your life, and you'll have something to fall back on. And you'll not just teach PE or health or history. He said, I've got coaches a dime a dozen coming out of there. And so I had 2 institute teachers over at Utah State that just second to none. And they would ask me a lot to go speak to youth groups, and I said, I'll be glad to. And they just take me in. I had to go over there to study because you just get bombarded in the library. Students come to you, what are you doing this for? What are you doing that for? I said, well, that's because that's what the coach wants, I guess. But anyway, so I study over there to get away from them because I couldn't study in the library. They just interrupt you. And but they'd asked me to speak and just wanted to know about the team and ask questions and all that, just to let you know they were interested. And I thought it was great. I'd say, gave me a testimony of the Institute. So I took a lot of classes, at least tried to take one each semester. And they were really good. And they asked me when I graduated, they said, come and go into seminary. That was another mistake I made, that I didn't do it. But I said, well, I'm going to probably do some coaching in it. They said, well, we need you in the seminary program. And I said, I don't know. I said, there's only one thing that I don't like about it. You move people around. And I said, I've been living out of a suitcase for 4 years. You know, went on a mission now, 2 years in college. And I said, I don't want to be moving around. I'd like to set some roots. He said, oh, but he said, each move is a raise up. He says, we got to have you. And they just kept after me. And finally I thought, no, I'm going to try this coaching bit. And I learned a valuable lesson. I coached down here 2 years, then I went to Las Vegas because the guy I played guard with was assistant coach down there. They needed another coach. He called me, he said, I understand you're not too happy up here. And I said, no, I'm not. Too much politics. And he said, well, come on down. We got a good team. So I went down, and then he didn't get his paperwork done to get a teaching certificate from Nevada. So they said, you had a temporary last year. If you don't have one this year, you can't. So he worked at the hotels, pulling the curtain, whatever he could. He was a Jewish kid from New York. And I thought, holy cow. Anyway, we played. We had Jimmy Miller out. I'm sure you don't remember him, but he played for the Y. We Las Vegas. Dick Truman was the coach's name. He won 3 state championships with that kid, and he had won 9 state championships because he was track coach. And he just studied everything he could get, and he found out how you stop getting shin splits.
How you stop getting what?
Shin splits.
Oh.
Where your down here hurts so bad you can hardly touch it.
Mm-hmm.
And he found out that that's because the muscles start to tighten. He pulls it from the front. And he says, if you'd stretch them out, I'd keep stretching them out, they won't get it. And at our track in Las Vegas, they had light poles. Just regular light poles up there, and he'd blow the whistle. Okay, belly up to the poles. About 4 of them would get on the same ones. He'd watch it. And he said, now we're going to do 10 minutes of this. And he says, so every spring, when all the other coaches were losing their good trackmen because of shin splits, mine didn't have it. So he said, my big kids that would run the mile or mile and a half, whatever, they could still do it. And he had 9 state championships, like I said, in 16 years. They ended up firing him because he didn't play the right kid.
Mm.
But that's the way it was. I thought that we won the state championship with Jimmy Miller again. He won one the year before I got there. This year they won one again, and then he ended up going to Y. And I thought, this is the ultimate. You finally get there and you win the championship. These guys have been complaining maybe they'll bury the knife and treat you like a human being. Didn't it? They said the only reason Las Vegas wins is they only care about winning. They don't care about the kids, not the bull. But that's what they said. I can't believe that. They get after you when you lose, and they get after you when you win. So I decided I was just going to come back to Brigham. I didn't want to raise my family. My first boy was born in Las Vegas. I thought I don't want to raise my family down here, so we moved back here to raise our family. I had 5 children, 4 boys and a girl. Nice place to raise a family. Then we ended up building this house we live in, 71. And we bought the lot. You can't believe how much I paid for the lot. $2,200. My house cost me $22,000.
Wow.
That was in 71. So I built at the right time and came at the right time. And my kids have seen the value of it. So that was one of the things that I think out of the people raising a family ought to decide, where they want to raise them. I thought it was a better place to be with your kids here, and usually good teammates, and they liked it. They still talk about it. And my boys, it was interesting. Well, 3 out of the 4 boys wanted to try it out for the football, basketball, and baseball, or my kids played tennis. For me, I was a coach, so they played tennis, and I thought it was really interesting that they would get cut off the football or the basketball. Probably the last one says you're just too little. Got their mother's side, and it was a little tough on them, but they understood. They did all right. They've done all right. I've got my oldest boy's a CPA, works for KPMG. He's doing well there. And my second boy's an orthodontist, and he lives in Salt Lake in Olympus area. What is it? In the Millhouse area, whatever you call it. And my third boy he just couldn't settle into anything. He'd try football, he'd try wrestling, he'd try this, he'd try that, tried singing. He wasn't too thrilled with it, but he said, look at your two older brothers. They went through this. And then my youngest one did the same thing, but he was too little. He'd be the last one cut. That was pretty tough on him. But I said, it's still a good area. So if you were in Salt Lake, then that'd be a lot tougher. They said, yeah, we understand that. So then my daughter, she became a cheerleader. I said, I thought you'd play sports. She says, no, I was watching the cheerleaders. She said, that's what I wanted to do. So she became a cheerleader for 2 years. She had a good group of kids. So yeah, that proved out that this is probably a good area. There's not a lot to get in trouble in, but I think there's enough to do. And that was interesting. So because I grew up in that type of family, my wife grew up in about the same type of family. She came from Tremont. We decided what we were going to do with our kids. Family home meeting, study the scriptures. And we did that. And I really think it made a difference with our kids. General authorities say, you know, if you have family home meeting regularly, your kids will do what they're supposed to do. And that was true. And so I gave a testimony of the family, and different from what the two of us went through. And I have a testimony of that too. And I've had the opportunity to do different things in the church. When I first got over here, I became an elders corps president. We were selling eggs in to raise money. It was quite interesting. And then after I've been an elders corps president, my neighbor over here became the stake president, and then they called him on a mission president, Ken Godfrey. And because of that, I got to serve on the High Council for a year or two. And then they took me out of that to serve in the bishopric to Win Jepson, a guy that lived up here. He's passed away, but what a heck of a guy. And then they called me to be bishop in 88 to 93 here. And of course, I grew up with most of the people. And that was a good but a very spiritual calling. And then when I got released, they called me to be an advisor to the young single adults. And they said, we want your wife, the two of you, couple. I says, what do we do? They said, we don't know. It just came out. They just said, this is what we need, you're it. And so we went and worked with the single adults and in our ward, and that was tough to get that thing going, but we tried to do activities, and then they put us in as the stake single adult advisors to help all these others. And we went to that, and I said, we need to have a party. I says, let's do this one upright. I said, I know a guy that works with me in the temple and knows a historian for the church. He can tell you about Joseph Smith. And this is in December. It's his birthday. Let's have him come. I said, oh, I'll talk to this guy about giving him his number. So I called him. He said, yeah, I'll be glad to come. And so we had a party, and we had Maddox food. We had turkey steak, chicken fried steak, there were different drinks, all of that. And we really got quite a number from that. And so after that was over, they called me back on the High Council And Ron Franson in the Fifth Ward was the state president. Oh, what a good guy. And I'm sure that's why he called me, and that's why I was in there 6.5 years. And it's because they were running the orchard and the garden spot. I was probably the only one who knew anything about it. And I said, yeah, I'll do that. So 6.5 years later, after they got a new state president, they finally released me. But I didn't mind it. I know how to dig in the dirt, and water, and buy trees. And so I served in that, and then I got released, and then it was about the time that I retired from high school, I guess. And so my friend just lives a block away from here. He was working at the temple, he and his wife, in the Ogden Temple. And she just keeled over in their kitchen one Sunday after church. And he called us. Ken and I went over, went down to the hospital, and that's the darndest thing I've ever seen. We just sat out in the emergency room area, and they were probably in the emergency room 45 minutes. The guy came out and went up to him and says, sorry, Pastor. You know, just that quick. So they had been working in the Ogden Temple. So his kids says, why don't you tell him you'll work there and then you go with my dad? I said, I can do that. So I went to work in the Ogden Temple as an ordinance worker. Learned all that stuff. And we were down there 7.5 years. And then they closed it to remodel it, or to build a new one, basically. And so we quit there because they just didn't have a temple. We said, we'll go to Logan or somewhere. They said, oh, you can only work in your area. And so my wife and I watched this temple be built. And I told my kids I wanted to work with your wife, or my wife and your mother. And so we worked up here 7.5 years, and this pandemic hit, and they fired us all. But he just says, the temple president said, if you're over 80, if you have any health conditions, sugar diabetes, AFib, you name it, if you have high blood pressure, hypertension, don't volunteer for anything. And so I said, "Call, I've been fired." But he says, "No, that we're just cutting back because of that. And with this pandemic, the older ones are susceptible, so I didn't work at the temple then anymore. That was 7.5 years here. And then after that, I thought, well, I still got my ward, Sunday school, priesthood. If you're over 65, you got to do it at home. I thought, oh God, lost the temple, lost my ward, and that'll be all right. I could overcome that. And then I thought at least they happened on a year when the NCAA tournament would be coming up. That was in February. March is the time. They canceled that. Thought I was a man without a country. Everything I had, I lost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
But that's been a great experience. So I really enjoyed working with my wife.
Pretty spiritual times.
And working at the temple, helping out. It was really, really enjoyable, both places. I thoroughly enjoyed Ogden. Met so many people from Morgan, down in Ogden area, just salt of the earth. And so I date all this back to going on a mission, the prophet Joseph Smith, and all of those things have just been highlighted in my life, and how we raise our children that way. And I knock on wood, they're all active in the church. So that's a big payoff. I know that the church is true. I know that Joseph Smith was the one that was directed to be the restorer of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And I'm thankful for the scriptures that we have. I wasn't familiar with him until I went on a mission. I came back and tried to stay active as far as study and that, and then I tried to apply these things to my family, and it works. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for Book of Mormon, and I'm grateful for all the prophets that we had during this restoration of that. I thought it was interesting as you stop to think, and I had a lot of time to think when they fired me from everything, so to speak, that you just can't believe what the Lord's doing. Look at President Thomas Monson. There isn't a better person that's an example of ministry. He knew how to go see people. And so he became the prophet. Well, and I guess I should say before that, Gordon B. Higley, family proclamation to the world. Right on. And then after President Monson, we get who?
President Nelson.
Who?
President Nelson.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And isn't it interesting? He's a medical doctor. How we get the pandemic? I don't think that was an accident. He's good. And I think the Lord is running this, and we need to stay close to Him and do what we can. And the Lord, obviously, I think is in charge, as you can see. I don't think it was an accident that these prophets came as they did. And I've heard several people say, "Are you going to get a shot for this pandemic?" And somebody says, "Yeah, why?" And he says, "I wouldn't do that if I were you." And the guy looked at it and he says, "Watch President Nelson. He's a doctor. If he gets it, you better get it." And he did. So I think this has been set out and placed there. And so I'm grateful for every chance you get to hear the prophets speak. And the thing they do is their preparedness, and I can say this, my second son, that's the orthodontist in Salt Lake, he became Bishop of President Monson's ward. And President Monson, he didn't want to live in town. He wanted to be in his old ward because he helped build the building. Been there 30 years, and we'd go down and listen to him speak once a year. Barton calls, "Hey, next Sunday's prophet." I said, "We'll be there," and that was educational. I'll tell you, to hear the prophet speak. And he was bishop there 4 years. President Monson was just as good as he could be. They just loved him. And the guy that took his place was his neighbor across the street. And every Wednesday he called the bishop. He said, "Bishop, come down here. I'd like to talk to you." So he says, I went down to his office, and he says, "Bishop so-and-so," he says, "why don't you come and eat with us? This is Crown Burger Day. Come and have a Crown Burger with us." He said, "Oh, no, you come on." So he said, "I got to eat with the Brigham Crown Burger." And so they really found out. And our kids got to see the prophet. All of that, my grandkids. So that's really something.
That's awesome.
So I know that the gospel's true because of what's happening. And what it says is going to happen, and it's coming. But I feel safe because I've got a spiritual leader that can help me to know what to do, to do what we're supposed to do. And I know it's true, and I'm thankful to be part of it, and I'm thankful for the bishop who called me another bishop. And I say that in the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen.